We definitely prioritize water stewardship. You know, we currently recycle over 98% of our wastewater, and we are among the nation's leaders in water reuse. So protecting and reusing our water is essential to our residents, ag, and food processing industries. I think number two, I've stated this in the past, and I will state it again, city-owned water will not be used for cooling data centers. I don't think I can stress that enough to the public. And I think they need to understand that is kind of the position of staff. Proposal review approach, when it comes to any data center or any potential data center proposal, we'll definitely do a thorough and responsible review. We will evaluate the cooling technologies closely, and as I said, we will not allow them to use city-owned water for cooling data centers. And then their proposals must align with our long-standing commitment to water stewardship. I think there's two other points I want to make clarification on is the ownership of the water rights that we'll be discussing. 70% of the water rights that are being discussed for purchase are owned by Jimmy Dean Reinert. The other 30% are owned by Jeff Reinert. And the last item I want to touch base on is the Kansas Water Transfer Act. Kansas Water Transfer Act is Kansas statute annotated 82A-1501, and the definitions which state that it must be more than 2,000 acre feet, and it has to be greater than a 35-mile radius from the diversion point in order for it to be to fall underneath that Water Transfer Act. With that, I'll turn it over to Tanner Rutschman.
Couple of questions, just
Yes,
real
sir.
quick, Nick.
Yes,
So
sir.
what I hear you saying is this presentation in our long-term water planning has nothing to do with any potential data center being relocated here in Ford County. Two separate issues.
That's 100% correct.
And then we are looking at the purchase of more than 2,000 acre feet. So that element of the rule, Kansas Water Transfer Act would apply, but the and does not because these water rights are 11, 12 miles away.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Colin. So planning for water, resiliency, and growth. This is the outline of the presentation here. We're going to go over and review the historic water use, at least dating back to 2002. That's as far as our records go currently with accurate data. We'll summarize the PEC Water Master Plan as much as I can. There's a lot of information, so bear with me on that section. We'll discuss long-term water right risk. We'll review the proposed Reinert water rights and the due diligence that was completed so far. And we'll compare acquisition/development costs versus other treatment alternatives. So the water use history dating back to 2002. So in 2002, the city had 6,541 acre feet available and developed. And in 2005, National Beef acquired and developed the South Well Field. So in 2005, their use came off of the city's use. So it freed up additional volumes for the city to use, separate from National Beef. So we had still that 6,541 acre feet up until 2010 when we developed 4 wells. Those aren't all 4 just new water rights. There was, we closed 2 wells and relocated a well, and we stacked some water rights on a new well as well. So that's when wells 19, 21, 29, and 30 came online, bringing up our available capacity for city use to 7,041 acre feet, or 43 acre feet.
We haven't drilled a well since 2010, is that correct?
That's correct. Well, sorry, we drilled a well, but it was just relocating an existing well, so
Gotcha.
not a new right.
Thank you.
That was out at the airport. We re-drilled well 31, or was it well 18? Now it's well 31, but it didn't add any additional water rights for the city to use. As you can see, we were before the 2010, we were trending down, and then from 2010, we were somewhat steady. We had a drop off in 2017, which was an odd year. National Beef actually had reduced use that year, and the city as well. It was a very wet year. There was the ice storm blizzard that came through. It was just an odd year for water use. But it was a wet summer, so there wasn't a high summer demand for irrigation and yard irrigation. So, but after 2017, you can see a pretty constant rise in usage in city water rights. And in 2020, we signed an agreement the first agreement with Cargill that would provide them up to 250,000 gallons a day. Currently, that is up to 1 million gallons a day. They aren't using that currently, but they have in the agreement, they have the ability to go up to 1 million gallons a day. So in 2025, you can see we used 95% of our available capacity for water when we use 6,676 acre feet. I put a little summary here in the bottom of 2026. If you include Hillmar and if Cargill were to go up to the 1 million gallons a day, that would put us, Hillmar, and Cargill together at a total of 6.3 million gallons a day, based on a city use of 4.22 million gallons a day, which actually is over our current water right allotment of 7,043 by 14 acre feet. So we are right there. Although, like I said, Cargill isn't pumping up to or taking up to the 1 million gallons a day currently. They're in the 500 to 7,000 gallons of water a day, but we have an agreement with them for them to take up to 1 million. So we theoretically, if they were taking the 1 million gallons a day, we would be right there at our current water right allotment. So
Is Hillmar currently using 1 million gallons a day?
yes, they're right there as well. They're in that 900,000 to just over 1 million gallons a day.
Is there an industry standard out there as to, you hit 80, 85, 90%? At what point do cities need to start taking it very serious to add capacity to?
We're beyond that point. I would say if we get up to over in the mid 80s, we need to be actively looking for water to bring more water online. Now, we've made recent purchases in water rights, which will help, but majority of that is for National Beef's usage and not for the city at large. And we have plans to bring a new well in the north zone as well. So, we can handle, those are incremental increases in our water rights, but it's not enough to give us comfort or even give us flexibility for any kind of future developments or growth, whether it be industrial, commercial, or residential.
And we began that conversation over 2 years ago when we bought the Harshberger Fisher water rights, and then also with the Reinhardt water rights. Also in the background, we had the MAR conversation taking place as well. So those conversations have been going on for about 3 years. So we've known we need to start looking at alternatives. And of course, the MAR project has been significantly altered as of just recently.
Well, and we knew when Hillmar was coming online, we were needing to go out and look for some additional water rights to bring on, because that was a 1 million gallons a day that we weren't previously having to account for.
And a big portion of this too is watering of yards in the summer.
Yeah.
That is a big chunk of that potential savings. So that's something we need to take in consideration as we're looking towards the future, and as we're getting close to that cap, we're going to have to look at reducing water usage within
It
the
drives
community.
up the city's average daily demand. So it brings up the average demand per day.
We'll go from an average in the winter months, 5-6 million, and then up to 12,
City use less than that.
less than that.
Or I don't know.
That, 5-6 million, that was including Cargill's demand.
Right.
And, Hillmar.
And then we'll get to 12 million in the summer, which is basically irrigation, correct?
Yep.
Do we have any more questions on water use history? Because this is really the only slide I have on the water use history for this presentation. I didn't want to have too much information. I felt like this condensed it down well enough to just paint the picture that we're in. Colin? So starting with the master plan, I'll hit the highlights, but in general, PEC evaluate our current and 2040, projected 2044 needs for pressure, fire flow, storage, our pumping, and distribution capacities. And through that, they identified specific improvements that we would need to take on and construct to meet those demands in those areas. Colin. So when they go through and they're looking at proposed improvements, they got to break it down on average day demand and maximum day demand. And they look at this, they look at they took the 50 largest water users in town, and based on those uses, they can project the maximum day demand, and then they generate the average day demand based on the historic pumping. In 2024, when the study was completed, we were there at 7.73 million gallons a day of average day demand, and they're projecting a steady growth over the next 20 years in that average day demand and maximum day demand. There'll be some more detail in the following slide on how that's broken out between, especially on the average day demand between the main top three users.
Tanner, I think from the couple of conversations I've had with people in town, I don't think they realize that we're working on the year 2044, and this is 2026, and this was actually completed in 2024, which is a 20-year outlook, which
Yes.
that's pretty common for cities to do, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think people need to understand that we're not looking just for next year, the year after that. We're looking down the road 20 years to be what we need to be in place to help the city in that time frame. So.
Yes, and the previous water master plan was completed back in 01, 02, and so it was about 20 years, and so then we did another one and we got these projections for the next 20 years.
Thank you.
Colin. So of that projected 20-year growth, they looked at the major water users. That's the city at large, Hillmar, Cargill, and National Beef. And you can see the city's portion over that 20 years is projected to increase by about 1 million gallons a day on the average day. National Beef held constant, Hillmar held constant, which, I mean, those could have growth as well. We're just holding them constant because we don't know. But we do project that, we started the Cargill agreement in 2020, it was 250,000 gallons a day. And we're already at 1 million gallons a day over 6 years. We know that it's due to well issues, and they have issues with nitrates too. So there's potential there for Cargill to need some more water for their process, or any other industrial user that could come along that could take the place of Cargill in these graphs. They're just from 2024 to 2044, they're projecting average day demand growth of almost 6 million gallons a day. And like I'd mentioned on the previous slide, based on 2026 figures with Cargill, Hillmar, and us coming up to 6.3 million gallons a day, that puts us right at our water right allotment, basically using 100% of our water rights.
That are developed.
Yes, that are developed.
Tanner, I guess at what point do we hold Cargill and Hillmar to the same standard we do National on acquiring water rights, or under their cost?
So currently Cargill pays twice the city rate. They pay the out-of-town rate, so there's no discount whatsoever for Cargill. So they're paying twice as much as what the normal residential customer pays. Hillmar pays the exact same rate as all residential customers and users. National Beef does get a discount, just due to the fact that they do own the water rights.
But they're also charged for any overages. So at the end of the year, typically October, November, December, National Beef is going into overages, and then they're charged the normal residential rate at that, so their discount rate goes away.
But the water right purchase that they just made will basically cover their overages, so they wouldn't be having to dip into us for their water needs. They'd be able to account for all of their water needs with the
When
recent
they bring
purchase.
their wells online, or when?
The water rights that were they just purchased, when that well comes online.
Yeah, that's when you'll kick that policy in, yeah.
Yep. Well, that's when that's why they went after that size of water right, because it's about how much they had been going over every year
Yeah.
in terms of their water rights.
I believe there's 1 year that the overage fee was in excess of $1 million, I believe, 1 year for national. So when they're looking at water right purchases and development of well, they're looking at it, from a 5 to 10 year outlook to try to reduce those long-term costs.
Colin? So we mentioned another aspect they looked at was fire protection, and the largest piece of that is being elevated storage. So in an emergency, you have to have a projected amount of storage in case of a fire that you can handle and not lose pressure in your system and provide that fire protection. So they do show us being at a deficit in storage in our south zone. The north zone is good both now and in the 2044 scenario, but the south zone is lacking almost 3.5 million gallons of elevated storage. And that's, they account for that in the planned improvements as constructing 2 more elevated storage or water towers
So
in the south
with that
zone.
being said, I mean, is there in works, are we talking about adding an additional water tower down south?
Yes.
Okay.
We definitely need to plan for, in this next 20 years, to construct at least one, if not both.
But that's contingent upon having the water rights available to service that elevated tower as well, correct? If demand continues along that 20-year trend, that's what kicks
Yes.
in the water tower
Yes,
discussion for at least 1, if not 2.
yes. But I would say that we need to start planning for at least 1 elevated storage.
And I believe in the work session two meetings ago, you went through that, right?
Yes. So
It's
that,
on the roadmap, this is the estimated cost, this is the
yes.
location.
And I have more information on that coming up. Colin? So the key findings in the master plan, looked at our current average day demand of 7.73 million gallons. The system is operating adequately, but growth pressures are emerging. So the projected 2044 average day demand is up there over 13.5 million gallons a day. So almost a 6 million gallon per day increase over current conditions, but is dependent on having to meet the demand of Cargill or some other industrial user. So, but the maximum day demand for 2044 is 20 million gallons per day. So this drives our pumping and storage needs. So with our active well capacity currently under that 20 million gallons, we are lacking in that area as well. So that's showing us that we need to bring additional wells into the system to meet that.
And with that being said, I mean, that includes residential, I mean, because
Yes.
we continue to build houses and,
Yes.
so we have to supply them with water, so, okay.
So showing also a deficit in the elevated storage of 3.5 million gallons. The south pressure zone needing the 2 extra towers. And then their recommended major improvements, and the estimate for all those improvements is over $65 million over that 20-year planning period. So I'll go through those improvements a little bit more in detail on the next slide. So when they were looking at these improvements, that includes modifying wells to upgrade the SCADA, have VFDs in all the systems, updating the set points to better control the tower cycling and pumping efficiency. Now, they said reactivate inactive wells, but that isn't possible. The wells that we have inactive are inactive for a reason, whether they are contaminated or we have nitrates or radionuclides in it, so or we transfer them to another point of diversion. So the storage needs, they need a 1 million gallon or 1.5 million gallon tower and a 2 million gallon tower in that south zone in that 20-year period based on the projected industrial growth or increase in demand. Upsizing and looking at system looping, we have some dead end lines, just a lot of small projects in there. The big projects are the towers, and then also the boundary zone modification, bringing the city of Wright and the airport into the north zone, and also bring additional wells into the north zone when that happens. So also replacing known cast iron mains. So with the $65.7 million $65.7 million 20-year project planning, about 45% of that can be accounted for with the water towers, the 2 towers.
But
And I-
doesn't include the acquisition of water rights.
No, it does not.
Sorry, Nick, to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
I was just going to mention, as we discussed previously, I think there's opportunities to partner with Koch in regards to the boundary modifications and the assistance with Wright, and I think we talked at length about that the last study session.
Colin? So moving on to the main planning focus areas when it comes to water rights and managing risks before it becomes a constraint. We kind of broke it down into 4 different areas of focus. Number 1, redundancy. We want enough supply to absorb 1 or 2 wells failing, temporary outages, or lost production from existing wells, which we have seen. We have seen yields on existing wells decrease over time, pretty much across the board. Number 2, resiliency, ability to respond if nitrates keep rising in existing wells, or aquifer decline, or drought-driven demand increases. Number 3, growth flexibility. We need capacity to serve new residential growth, commercial expansion, or new industrial prospect that needs water quickly. Number 4, risk management. Avoid being one issue away from a supply constraint. So whether that's new regulations affecting source quality, water quality changes, or limited developed rights during high demand years. So we don't want to just meet the projected demand. It's to protect the city from well failure and these other issues that arise that are unknowns today. So when we look at water rights, we look at kind of two aspects. You could have your incremental growth or your strategic, large purchase, which we're in a position to compare right now. So when we look at, I think we believe, staff believes they both have an important role to fill. So incremental smaller rights, you're typically going to get a converted right that's in the 180 to 220 acre foot range. Through the acquisition, we've talked to several willing sellers, and everyone wants in that $3,000 to $3,750 an acre foot range. So if you assume the cost of the well and say a mile transmission line, and then the soft costs on top of that, you're looking anywhere from $14,000 to over $16,000 on a per acre foot cost to develop a single well like that.
I think one point that needs to be made in regards to the price per acre foot and the individuals that are wanting to sell their water rights, we don't approach individuals if individuals approach us in regards to wanting to sell their water rights. And so I think we need to make that very clear that we don't actively go out there seeking purchase. It's almost always, has always been them coming to us.
And I would say ever since we started talking about this purchase or potential purchase, we've had many more individuals come forward and offer up their water rights for sale. So also on the strategic acquisition side, as it relates to the Reinert water rights scenario, which is a converted volume of 3,343 acre feet. I'll go through a more detailed cost estimate on this, but let's assume it's $25 to $31 million all in with acquisition. That comes out to $7,500 to $9,200 per acre foot developed cost, with all the costs included: transmission line, acquisition, wells, soft costs, everything. So it also, when you buy a large package of water rights like that in a close geographical area, it supports a planned well field development. You can combine rights, have several larger wells instead of tons of smaller wells. So, for instance, compared to 180 to 220 acre foot right, it would take 15 and 19 of them to equate to this large strategic purchase. So, in our eyes, in talking with Corey, our ideal well is going to have a capacity to pump anywhere from 400 to 600 GPM, which we prefer on the higher end of that, or even higher if possible, because we have seen declines in yield over time on our existing wells. And you also want to be able to pump 9 to 10 months out of the year. It isn't as efficient and cost effective to develop a well that can only pump 4 to 6 months out of the year. It makes more sense to be able to and utilize that investment to pump for 9 to 10 months out of the year. So to be able to get 400 to 600 GPM and pump 9 to 10 months out of the year, you would need a right on your well in the range of 485 to 805 acre feet.
So in clarification, an acre foot is 325,000 gallons.
Correct. So that's much larger than 180 or 220 acre foot water right. That means you need to ideally strategically buy in a high yield area where you can lump 3 rights together to get, or sometimes if they're 2 larger rights, to get a high yield well. Because also, if you look at it from a revenue potential or return on your investment, we are selling this water. So the more water you can pump out of a well, the more money that well can make you in a year. And if you compare a 200 to 250 GPM well to a 400 to 600 GPM well, you can be looking at a difference in revenue potential on that well from $177,000 to over $500,000 a year. So that's a return on your investment that you're getting back.
Well, it also allows us to rest wells if we have more water rights, that we can rest wells that we pump now 24/7, 365.
Yes. So smaller nearby rights should still be pursued when available, and when they're brought to us, we look at everything in the right. What's the yield? What's capacity? What's the recent history and use? What's the quality? They have their place in long-term water supply planning. But this large acquisition supports a more ideal municipal well field development where you can lump those rights together that have that high yield, and you can have less infrastructure to bring that water into your system, and a lower cost overall per acre foot. But again, we don't see them as competing strategies. Colin? So the Reinert water rights and Ensign, the due diligence that we have completed to date, we'll give you a quick a snapshot of that. Current authorized volume is 3,742 acre feet. After conversion, you'll have a portion in gray and a portion in forward, which I believe if it's 64% of the rights are in forward and 36% of the rights are in gray. But the conversion factor is basically the same, being a 0.1% difference. So converted, they're about 3,343 acre feet, which equates to about 3 million gallons a day, or about half of our projected increase in average day demand over the next 20 years. It's a $10 million purchase. Based on current authorized volume, that's $2,672 per acre foot. We have recently purchased water rights for $3,750 an acre foot, and we've had conversations with other willing sellers over the past couple of weeks that are in the $3,000 to $3,750 range. So why it matters, the large Reinert package provides a large block of water rights, a lower unit cost than recent smaller acquisitions. Even after conversion to municipal use, the package remains a competitive long-term supply. The acquisition has meaningful scale, redundancy, and growth capacity that will be difficult to recreate through scattered smaller purchases. So we see it as an exceptional value, not to mention the yields that are coming out of these wells, greater than 1,500 GPM. So even much higher than what we consider an ideal well, in that anywhere from that 400 to 600 GPM range.
Corey, you want to talk about the water quality in regards to those water rights?
I have this next slide.
Okay, sorry.
Colin.
So just to hit that point home for just a second, your evaluation is what kind of volumes per minute can we get from a well? And your standard bench line is somewhere in the neighborhood of 600 gallons per minute. And we are talking about wells here that are in excess of 1,500 gallons per minute
That's
of
correct.
capacity.
That's correct. And we've had wells. We only have, so I didn't really cover it on our water use, but we have 24 wells, and currently only half of those wells can generate yields of greater than 500 GPM. And many of them started well above 500. So over time, we see yields decline. So if we can start that bar higher, it gives us much longer, higher availability for higher yields. Because we know over time, you do see some drop in yield. So also through our due diligence, we looked at the hydrogeologic factors and the water quality. So in terms of hydrogeology, the rights are located in a deeper channel within the Ogallala Aquifer. So these water rights are 300 plus foot deep, or the aquifer is 300 plus foot deep in this area of Ensign. Whereas outside of this channel, they're about 100 foot shallower. So we're in the 200 foot range. So we're a much deeper area of the aquifer than the surrounding area. And a recent pumping test had indicated over 1,500 GPM in these wells. So, and through the hydrogeologic study that was completed, it suggested that it's strong aquifer potential for municipal scale well development. So in the water quality, everything we have seen is lower than, like, say, our south well fields in terms of nitrates and even hardness. So it is a good source to blend with those higher nitrate wells to bring them into the system and be able to operate wells to their fullest. Because currently, we have wells that are hindered and can't operate unless we have a source to blend with it. Since they're operating 11 or 12 parts per million nitrates, we have to make sure that other wells that have lower nitrates are blending with it to bring it within below the 10 milligrams per liter MCL.
I think the other point on the hydrogeologic findings is the two wells that are kind of in the general area. We looked at their water right level, or water levels, static water levels over the last 20, 25 years. One decreased 2 foot in that time period. The other one decreased 5 foot over a 25-year period. So very small reduction over that 25-year period. But the static water level to the bottom, that 300
over 100
foot, it's over 100 foot of saturated thickness from where its static water level is to where that well was actually drilled.
That's correct.
Back to water quality too, so we not only tested the wells just for water quality as far as potable water, but with more and more emphasis on PFAS. We also did UCMR5 testing on these wells for PFAS, and they were all non-detect as well. So, it has
You
that
might,
too.
you might explain what that acronym is for people that are watching?
PFAS, man. Yeah, it's a forever chemical that is in, like firefighting foam was a big forever chemical, but it's just in plastics and it can seep into groundwater. So they're doing a lot of testing for that right now, and it does have some regulatory mandates through the EPA, and it's something that we'll have to start watching on all of our wells.
Oh, yeah, all of our wells.
Yes.
So why these findings matter? It supports the feasibility of a planned municipal well field being able to lump multiple rights together with high yield in one well. Provides a source for strong production potential and favorable water quality characteristics, and it could improve the city's long-term flexibility by adding a source that may help offset future water quality constraints in our existing wells. Colin. So we'll break down a planning level cost summary to develop these rights. The $10 million purchase, assuming 4 to 5 wells on those 3,343 acre feet. Transmission line, we don't know the sizing yet, anywhere from 16 to 24 inch. Brings the hard cost of $23 to $26 million. You'll have soft costs on top of that. Brings you up to the $25 to $31 million price tag, which puts you in that $7,500 to $9,200 per acre foot of a development cost. Colin?
So just curious, Tanner, the south well field we have, how far is it from Dodge City?
The South Well Field, anywhere from 10 to 12 miles.
So we would be the same distance on the Reiner property, 11 miles, 12 miles, be the same distance.
Well, it'd be about 11 miles to our system.
Okay.
So we have the raw water line coming into town along 110 Road. From 110 Road to Ensign is 10 miles.
Okay.
And I think the current layout that we've been looking at is Saddle Road. Is that correct?
Saddle Road would probably be the easiest because working with the county, it's a county road, it's not a township road. We could go in there right away.
Yeah.
But if there's other favorable wells that are north of there, say along Ridge or even further north, we could take a different route.
Because I was having people ask me, does this include like right away you'd have to purchase? But the way I understand it, if you go down Saddle, the county would work with us and not charge us for
Yeah.
put a pipeline.
So county allows public utilities to go in their right of ways.
And I had recent conversations with the county administrator in regards to water line placement in county right-of-way. No concerns. We've done it for almost every project that we've done in the county. There's no concerns in regards. And we're also, other infrastructure or industrial projects that we've looked at in the past, we've worked well with them. So I don't think there's any concern there.
We reached out to the Gray County Public Works Director, and he said, as long as it was a public utility, we met their permitting and their requirements for plan preparation and construction methods, that he didn't see any reason why we couldn't also use county road right-of-way in, that 1 or 2 miles inside the Gray County line.
And there is a portion of the water rights that are already authorized for transfer from Gray County into Ford County, and that's been that way since the 50s, was approved for the Department of Water or Division of Water Resources. But also there was a new line that was placed in an easement that was granted by the state of Kansas and KDOT to actually transfer that water underneath the state highway onto the east side of the roadway.
So why staff thinks that these water rights make sense? There's strategic benefits. It adds 46% of the projected capacity in 2044 to our system, or accounts for 46% of it. It adds 46% to our existing water right portfolio. It supports about half of the projected 2044 average day demand. It allows for that planned well field development, lumping rights together with high yield well, with fewer points of diversion, and it creates opportunity for potential industrial cost participation. If the city lacks water, it may not just lose supply reliability, but it may lose future economic development opportunities. Every couple of weeks, it seems like we get an email from Kansas Department of Commerce feeling out whether for a prospect on a development, whether we can provide some specific water needs or handle wastewater needs for proposed developments. And a lot of them, they're like, hey, can you provide 200,000 gallons a day? There's specific requirements they're asking for, and right now, I wouldn't feel comfortable telling them that we could provide a water demand of anything over 100,000 gallons or anything like that, because we are right there at our capacity.
40 years ago, when the city built the South Wastewater Plant, the city commissioners reserved approximately the same amount of water rights as what we're looking at on the Reinhard Ensign rights. And if we hadn't have done that, if the city hadn't have done that, in 04, when National Beef was looking to expand and provide the economic expansion into the city, the city would have been trying to find additional water rights, or National Beef would have been trying to find additional water rights, or it just wouldn't have happened, and so there wouldn't have been any growth. So having these large quantities of water rights available is a big help for or a driver for economic growth.
When it comes to potential industrial user participation, it could be anything from, paying for the increase in capacity, paying for infrastructure, paying for wells, take or pay agreements, any option, capital contribution. So that does provide us some flexibility there to help offset some of the costs that this $25 to $31 million investment would take. Colin. So lots of information here. I'm not going to cover everything. These next three slides are purely looking at, we know we have degrading quality in some of our wells. We know we have existing water rights that are undeveloped that have quality issues in terms of nitrates. So wanted to throw out a couple of scenarios for you tonight. One would be with a ion exchange nitrate removal system or treatment process. So we know that we have about 1,000 acre-foot of water rights that are hindered with nitrates. And one of them is a developed well. The other wells rights are not converted and developed, but well 19 has nitrates. It's had hit up to 30 parts? 30 parts per million. We believe these other rights they're right adjacent to it, so they're probably in the same range, maybe a little lower. But if we wanted to bring them online, that'd be about 1,000 acre-foot, and it would equate to about 900,000 gallons per day.
And we need how many gallons per day in the 20-year forecast? More?
Yes, we need almost 6 million gallons per day more.
So this would be 1/6 of that.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's an option. It's water rights that we already own. They're there, they're just not being used. So if you wanted the capital expense to develop a facility like this would be just under $16 million. So that equates to about $16,000 per acre foot to develop and bring into the system and use. So that equates, if you take in the financing and the operational expense, equates to about $1 million a year, or $3.10 per 1,000 gallons of treated water, with the OpEx being just about 55 cents per 1,000 gallons. So another thing you have to think about with any kind of treatment system that we would look at to handle the contaminants that we're needing to take care of, you're going to have some sort of reject stream that you have to deal with. So in terms of an ion exchange system for nitrates, you would have, just set a planning level target of 2%, you'd have about up to 18,000 gallons per day of a reject stream. Now, at 350 parts per million, this is a manageable stream that could potentially be sent to the South wastewater plant. So that isn't necessarily a hindrance, but it is a waste stream that you have to deal with that adds cost to the operations. Colin? So going back again to the projected demands in 2044, if, say, this 13 million gallon per day centralized RO treatment facility would not even be able to handle the projected demands of 2024 or 2044, not the peak hour demands, but it would be right there at the maximum day demands, and then you'd have no room for growth after that. So a 13 million gallon per day centralized RO treatment facility, you're looking at a much larger capital expense. You're looking in the $150 million range. So anywhere from 130 to 150. That equates to an annual cost of 11.38 to $12.4 million per year when it comes to debt service and operational expense. The only way that we're going to be able to construct and operate a facility like that is impacting rates and increasing rates. This would increase rates to the citizens by almost 60% and increase rates to National Beef by almost 144%, or at around 144%.
And that debt service is for 30 years.
Yeah. So yeah, you're financing it for 30 years, and you're just able to meet the demands of the 20 years.
So how many water rights do we own that are undeveloped?
Undeveloped.
There are 4 rights south of town, south of the river, that are just under, or just over 900 acre feet. We're in the process of developing the right in the north zone that was around the 250 acre feet. We have an option to purchase, and we're making annual payments on it, on an additional water right. And it's in the, I believe, in about the 250 to 300 acre foot range.
And then we just purchased the one.
And then we just purchased.
The new one south.
Yeah, purchased another one south of town.
Thank you.
So here in the bottom right, I just brought up a compare. When you think about RO, you have an even larger reject. So it's about conservatively a 12.5% reject stream. So, and when it comes to RO, it's such a concentrated stream that the only way to get rid of it is through deep well injection. And that's water that it leaves, it's not coming back. It's lost forever. So you just have to operate at a loss there, especially on a 13 million gallon per day facility where you're to have 13 million gallons of finished water, you need 14.86 million gallons of raw water going into the facility. So you have almost 2 million gallons a day that you are injecting into the earth and losing from the water cycle. And then to be able to provide up to 14.86 million gallons a day to that facility, we would need an additional 6,500 acre feet of water.
So the ion exchange, that takes nitrates from what level to what level? Does it take it to zero?
Right, in the ion exchange scenario, I was estimating we would go from 15 parts down to 8 parts, just comfortably below the level of 10, the maximum contaminant level of 10.
The issue you run into with nitrates is it's very, you going from an 8 to a 5 is substantially more expensive than going from a 15 to a 10. And so the capital cost and operational costs substantially increase as you're trying to get that nitrate number lower.
Colin? So in a scenario where we just look to meet the demand of the city at large with a RO facility, and it would only be meeting it at the current day demand, we would still have an investment of $80 million. Is that what I had in there? So, and then you're leaving your industry to fend for themselves, which I don't know if I would want to go that route, but if it was an option to consider, it would, to build an 8 million gallon per day RO facility would be 80 million, and it would cause an increase in rates to the citizens to help pay for that, finance that, up to a 67% increase from current rates. You would also still have your reject stream, so over 1 million gallons a day you would be injecting into the earth. And to be able to feed the 9.14 million gallons a day to an 8 million gallon per day RO treatment facility, we would need, from current water right quantities, an additional 3,195 acre feet.
So anybody in this area have those kind of treatment plants?
No.
Lakin has an RO facility.
Who does?
Lakin, the
What
city of
size is
Lakin, nothing compared to this size. No, it's very small.
Garden City doesn't, Liberal doesn't.
They have water treatment, just not an RO treatment plant.
That's correct. They're more for hardness type issues,
Yeah.
not for contaminants.
The only reason Lakin went that way was because they have
Radionuclides.
radionuclide contamination in their wells.
Well, as you can see, the annual cost for this type of facility is almost $6 million a year.
And I believe our current operational expenditures are in that $6 to $7 million a year. So you're basically doubling your operational and debt service expenditures by bringing a project like this on.
Nick, do you want to go over this next slide? The water fund?
Yeah, so here's our current conditions of the water fund. And I did some analysis on looking at 23 to 20 or 2036 over the next 10 years and the previous 3 years, of kind of showing you where we're at. Revenues are projected to grow. I have it about 4% is what's our average been. I did increase the expenditures by 5% per year. And basically what you see in between then is the gap of what is available for capital outlay and for different projects that we have occurring through the city. So you will see that there is pretty significant amount of funds, anywhere from the tune of 2.5 million up to 3.5 million over the next 10 years for capital projects and outlay per year. And even with that, that maintains basically a zero level or the same level without any reduction on our cash balance. Our cash balance as of today is almost $10 million. It's 9 point something, but it's close to $10 million as it is today. But even if we were to put out the 2.5 million or more for those funds, we're really not significantly impacting the cash reserves. What our goal is, in knowing that we have a lot of capital outlay coming to meet the 20-year projection, anywhere between a 50 to 100% of our annual expenditures is kind of our target for that cash reserve in that fund. If we can reduce that 1 year, we can easily build it up the next year. A lot of our large capital projects, it's going to take several years for them to get designed and constructed. So it's not going to be like an all 1 year type hit. It'll probably be a multi-year hit on a lot of these capital projects. But basically what this shows is we have the capacity to purchase water rights, to do water projects, water line replacement, water line enhancements, even potentially planning for and allowing for the addition of water towers, well field development, anything else that needs to take place. We're in a pretty comfortable position with just looking at those 4% type increases. And the way that we've done it is based upon the 5-year average of the CPIU for utilities in regards to water, wastewater, and sanitation. And so that's the average we've been utilizing. Hillmar and National both understand that that's how we do our water rate increases every year. So they know that that's how they plan for the upcoming year as far as what they need to budget for their expenses. So as long as we maintain that, it's a pretty comfortable situation for our large industrial users, which do represent about 50% of our daily volume between Hillmar, Cargill, and National.
Hey, Nick, just give a big overview of the different funds and how it affects like water, wastewater, and ad valorem, how one fund doesn't necessarily affect the other fund.
Yeah, so we are business, we run what is called business enterprise funds. That is, the business enterprise funds are sanitation, wastewater, sewer, and water. And so what we do is we have to look at that as its own individual business that it runs, and it has to maintain itself. We have to ensure that water revenues cover water expenses, and that we're not relying upon our wastewater fund to cover water expenses. Unfortunately, in the past, our water wastewater fund was combined. We did separate those out in the last 6 years. And so with that separation, we're able to better track what our revenues and expenses are in each one of those funds, because the wastewater fund was carrying the water fund for 20 plus years. And that was the only way that we were able to do anything. But we weren't doing water line replacement. We weren't doing well replacement. We weren't purchasing water rights because we really didn't have any funds available to really do some long-term planning.
I guess the short of it is, these types of decisions don't necessarily indicate any increase in property taxes at all.
That's correct.
I have 2 final slides, but do we want to delay? I will not be able to get through them in a minute or whatever it is.
We can just extend, can we?
Yeah.
It's your decision.
Yeah.
Just-
Can we?
I don't think we can extend. We have to start our normal meeting at 7.
Oh, it's always lawyers.
I'm sorry. We
Might we
could.
be able to, in staff reports, come back and finish up the last 2 slides? I mean, my preference for the behalf of the community is that they can watch this from the first second
Yeah.
to the end so that they can see the entire presentation to its end. But perhaps we can do some manipulation to the video to do your part during staff reports at the end to make it one continuous presentation.
Well, we plan to have the presentation available too, the actual PowerPoint or PDF version of it.
Yes, I apologize. And just for the public benefit, this is a Kansas Open Meetings Act rule, not a page rule. So we do have to start our normally scheduled meeting at 7.
I got it.
Are there any other questions before we adjourn this part? Seeing none. We'll adjourn the work session and come back here shortly for regular meeting.
are needing to connect to city water. And what that entails is with the agreement, it allows them to hook to city water. There is a connection fee based on if it's a residential customer or a business customer. I believe it's $27.50 for a residential and $32.50 for a commercial. And that helps offset water rights or water infrastructure that new agreement would be using. What you have tonight in front of you is this commercial establishment east of town is looking to connect their office building, which is, it's Sunflower Electric, to city water for domestic needs. They, bathrooms and a kitchenette and some showers. It's nothing with processing or anything like that. It's just domestic. We would set the meter. They would pay the city the cost of setting that meter, and then they also have to install the service from that meter to their office building.
Ray, this office is the small.
It's
out
the
front.
little house that's out front, correct?
Okay.
Yeah, they purchased that several years ago and converted that to their office building.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion to present the consent calendar as presented.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next up, we have ordinances and next up, we'll have the visitors section. 15 minutes per topic, 5 minutes per individual. No action will be taken unless an emergency situation does exist. At this time, is there anybody in the public that'd like to come forward? Seeing none, we will close the visitors section and move on to ordinances and resolutions. This time we'll have approval of a community development block grant, resolution 2026-11 and 2026-12, and funding application, report by Director of Parks and Recreation, Daniel Cecil.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight I'm requesting your approval of Resolutions 2026-11 and 2026-12, which would authorize the City of Dodge City to apply for a community development block grant to fund improvements at Thoreau Park and provide assurances for its ongoing maintenance and operations. In 2025, the city applied for a community development block grant through the state, but due to it being late in the cycle and money having already been obligated through CDBG, no funds were available to fund the Thoreau Park project. As city staff met with CDBG staff in early 2026, we were encouraged to submit an application during that cycle. And with the recent opening of the splash pad in Beeson Park, there had been quite a bit of positive community feedback from having that splash pad down there, so staff moved forward with looking at a proposed splash pad for Thoreau Park. This location was chosen given its proximity to Sundance Apartments, the HUD low-income housing area, the walking trail extension for Comanche, and Arrowhead West. It's also consistent with the city's comprehensive plan for 2030 to maintain and upgrade city parks. As part of the city's citizen participation plan, the information was also shared through various mediums, including sending out approximately 1,200 letters to residents within a 1 mile radius of the park, hosting a block party back in October of 2025 to get make people aware of the project with about 20 participants there, and then also holding a public hearing on October 20th. The staff also distributed the information through community contacts such as Dodge City Public Schools, the Dodge City Public Library, the city's Cultural Relations Advisory Board, Arrowhead West, and Beyond Barriers. Staff also attended different events such as the Spring Fling back in April of this year, the USD 443's Law Day event, and the 15th Annual Main Street Festival this last weekend to promote the project and make the public aware of our desire to develop it in Thoreau Park. A public hearing was also held on May 18th of this year during the commission meeting to allow people to see that design and what we're proposing. Overall, staff has received positive feedback from the community as well as organizations, seeing it as a priority and need for other outdoor recreational opportunities that are safe and accessible to children of all ages and disabilities. The project budget for the splash pad is $2,111,963.93. The city is eligible to apply for up to 1.5 million in CDBG funds that must provide a minimum 20% local match. However, more points are awarded during the review process if there is an increased local match. By approving the resolutions, the city is committing to finding the funding required, and the proposed local match is broke down in the image provided in this memo. Resolutions 2026-11 and 2026-12 have been reviewed by the city attorney, and if the city CDBG application is approved by the state, the city attorney will review and recommend the funding agreement to the city commission for their approval. I believe you have the resolutions as well as other required documentation for the full application to the CDBG. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Daniel on this?
Daniel, that existing concrete pad over there, is there anything to use it as well, or no?
You know, we've looked at it a couple of times. We think there'd be an opportunity to maybe do some futsal or something like that over there. It's not in terrible shape. It's workable. So I think we could look at doing something else to upgrade that and just have another amenity there. That's something that we've talked about in the past, is doing that. There's old tennis courts, but we think, some futsal could be a good upgrade and amenity that we could provide at Thurl Park.
Would that be something you would include with this, or at a later date maybe, or what?
Not in this project, but we could easily do it at a later date, and I think we could budget through CIP and get something done with it, yeah. Absolutely.
And on the existing plans, is that, turf, grass, what is that?
So we're looking at doing turf under the playground. It'd be concrete for the splash pad, and then concrete with some other, rock features and things like that in the stream. There'd be turf underneath the splash pad. That's kind of what we were proposing there. And then you see some other native areas with trees, grass, things like that going through there. And the sidewalks would be the new parking lot as well. That would be standalone for the park itself. We don't have a true off-street parking area, so that would provide something that we don't have there with good ADA accessibility. The public restrooms that we'd be able to provide there as well, something that we don't have in that park. And then shade structures and things like that would all also be included in that.
Is all that stuff that you can leave up through the winter and all that?
Correct,
all the
yeah.
structures?
Yeah, we would just need to winterize the water elements of that, the splash pad, the stream, probably the restroom for a few months out of the year, similar to what we currently do in Wright Park.
Have you learned anything from Wright Park that you would do differently in this one?
Not
Not
necessarily.
Wright Park, but Beeson.
Beeson? Not necessarily. I think the drainaway system, like what we have down there, is a very good option for us. What we're looking at here is a little more ground-based kind of geysers coming up rather than having overhead structures like what we have in Beeson. I think those are more than sufficient to do what we're trying to accomplish here, especially with the stream option there. You can chase them, you can do different things. The kids can have different patterns to be able to run through and chase them down. So I think just the water opportunity itself is the most important aspect, not necessarily, having the tunnels to run through and the water falling down and things like that. It's just that opportunity to play in the water a little bit.
Are there any other questions for Daniel or any action on this item?
Your Honor, make a motion that we approve the grant resolutions 2026-11 and 2026-12 and the funding application.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Guess up next, we will have staff reports.
I have nothing to report.
Nothing for me.
Nick, Mr. Page, Melissa, Nicole. Seeing none, I guess we will continue. Connie, do you have anything? No?
We're just making sure you're going to call on Tanner.
You'll have to adjourn this meeting.
Yeah, we'll have to
and then-
adjourn.
Okay.
Okay.
Your Honor, make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
All right, I will recuse myself again.
Your Honor, make a motion, we go back into work session.
Second?
We have a motion and a second for work session. All in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. We will continue with Tanner doing our work session on our water study.
Next slide, Colin. So how a large-scale aerial water right purchase fits the water fund. So the purchase already fits the projection. You saw that, it was shown on the previous slide, graphing out the operation expenses with the outlay in there of the $2.5 million down, and then the annual $528,000 payment through 2036, and the projected cash balance remains stable. Development costs beyond purchase, we walked through that development cost. You're looking in the range of $25 to $31 million. To finance that over 30 years, it's going to be in the $800 to $1.1 million per year range. But this also creates long-term municipal supply capacity. So it could fit a phased development well, where you acquire the rights now, you work through completing test wells and potential easements, and then through design, and then you can build wells and transmission as demand or industrial participation develops. So lastly, compared to treatment, going out and acquiring good quality water in a large quantity is much more feasible to extend and push out that future treatment project, that large capital expense down the line that would require a major new revenue and debt. Colin? So in conclusion, and how would we recommend moving forward? We know there's a projected supply need. This is can account for half of that projected shortfall in supply today. So this additional water right improves reliability, flexibility, industrial capacity, and drought readiness. 2, comparing incremental versus a strategic supply acquisition. The smaller nearby rights remain useful, and we feel like they should still be part of our planning process and strategy for long-term water supply. However, it would take 15 to 19 of these smaller acquisitions to equate to this larger strategic purchase. The large acquisition supports the planned municipal well field, like we discussed, combining rights and having high yield wells. Number 3, why this purchase is unique. I've mentioned it throughout, but lumping them together into a high yield well, you could have 3,343 acre feet, which is a large quantity of water in a small geographic area. It adds about 46% to the existing available developed water rights. And we consider it a multi-generational supply for the city of Dodge City. Overall economic feasibility, grand total to acquire and develop $25 to $31 million. That comes out to $7,500 to $9,200 per acre foot developed. It compares favorably to the small right acquisition, and you secure a clean drinking water source that could help delay centralized treatment capital expense. But there also remains the potential there for industrial participation to help carry the load and fund improvement or development of these water rights too. But with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
And I have one comment. When we started looking at this a couple years ago, I was skeptical. One, the city's never looked at any water rights that far west. There's also the perception of who was the seller. The city has gone through that in the past, and sometimes it appears to be a black eye or something like that. But as we did our due diligence and we looked more and more into these water rights, it is the thing that the city needs to do now. As it was mentioned, it's 46% of our existing allocation. It is a multi-generational purchase that we don't have to develop right now, but we can develop over a staged development over several years. And I look at it the same thing that we did 40 years ago when we reserved the rights down at the South Plant, and it set us up for some economic development and also population growth. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. I think this is a good idea, and I would support it. So.
We also, I guess I didn't mention, I mentioned that we had additional water right owners come forward and offer their rights for sale, and we are still evaluating those. There are additional rights, a willing seller adjacent to these water rights that we're discussing that would be another 900 plus acre feet in this same deep channel in the aquifer with high yield as well. So there are still other rights in the area that would fit as well, that we could have an option to purchase.
And there's only been one other owner that's approached us out of the multitude that has been anywhere below that $3,750 an acre foot. And no one has came to us with anything greater. I think one had 600 acre feet, but they weren't, but they didn't want to give those up, but they were willing to do an option in the future. And so most of them that we're seeing are in that 260 to 300, is that correct?
Yep.
And Corey as well, because Corey's reviewing every single one that's came to us and approached us to start that conversation, to look at pumping, look at the location, look how it could fit in our system. So he's evaluating that and starting that process, because there's a lot of testing and a lot of time it takes to evaluate each and every one of these acquisition or potential acquisitions.
And I've always also worked out with most of those owners a time where we can actually go and sample just to see what quality is, to see if there's a discussion to be had still.
Yeah, and Corey's discussions with Mr. Hamilton, he owns rights closer to 283, so where our raw transmission line is in the same area that we own rights, and he also owns rights out by Ensign, and he had discussions with Corey on the the stark difference between the quality of the rights over by Ensign and the quality of the rights closer to 283 where our South Wellfield is. So just anecdotally, he knows like it's an obvious difference in quality of water in the area. We didn't really talk about it much either. If we were to move forward with this, we would potentially look to assist Ensign in the operation of their water system as well.
Which is a very common practice across the state of Kansas for municipalities to service communities and rural water districts that are both outside of their community boundaries and even outside of their county boundaries. So it's a very common practice. Reached out to former KDHE professional, Kathy Tucker-Vogel, who was actually responsible for a lot of those agreements and ensuring that those agreements were done properly, and also with Tracy Streeter, who worked with the Kansas Water Office, just to ensure there wasn't any issues or concerns from that we need to be aware of. And there's absolutely nothing. It's a common practice throughout the state.
Which we currently do with the city
Right.
of Wright.
Correct. The only difference is Ensign's located in Gray County,
Yeah.
but it's not uncommon for communities to service outside of their county.
And I don't remember whether we actually did it, but the city of Ford needed help at one point in time with setting some meters. Did we ever end up helping them? I don't remember, but there's a lot of the small communities around us that just simply don't own the expensive equipment that we own.
Or they don't have certified operators.
And that's the
What they run
big
into.
key with Ensign is they're, in the future, they're not going to have a certified operator that can handle their wells. And they're a small system, very comparable to what we do with Wright. And so there is ability there. And they have some water rights that are located within their community. It's less than 100 acre foot, but they have the infrastructure already in place to service their community.
Thanks.
We've helped Ford. I don't know, but I know they've had issues with water quality and various things, but we're willing to help whoever calls and asks, so.
Pertaining to the nature of the agreement, if I understand the agreement correctly, which was in the June 1st packet, effectively, we would buy day of closing 25% of the water rights and would control 25% of the water rights. Day of closing, what happens with the other 75%? The Reinerts maintain control of pumping capacity and will slowly work its way down as we buy more rights, or how does that work?
No, it's like mortgaging a house. So you own the whole house. We'll own all the water rights, but we will only be able to have the right to convert to municipal use what we've paid
Gotcha.
for. So Reiner will be, or the seller, whoever's irrigating, will have the right to lease back at $50 an acre foot whatever has not been converted to sole municipal use. But we will own all the water rights, and any irrigation that happens, we will get paid for that under the agreement.
But we do
But we
not-
would also reserve the right to stop pumping those water rights at the end of this crop season.
the converted rights.
Yes, just the converted rates.
Converted rights being the first 25%.
Yes.
So in the event we wanted to shut off the water supply or the use of those wells, we would need to be in a position through debt or cash reserves to pay $10 million day of closing. And then at that point, we would have the ability to do what we want.
That's correct.
Yes.
That's my final question. Thank you for the presentation. I thought it was very well done.
Thank you, Tanner. Are there any other questions for Tanner? If not, we will close this work session.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.